It was January 9th, 2026, at 2:47 a.m. when a crushing weight of spiritual burden, something I couldn't name, couldn't shake, couldn't pray away, drove me to the Mojave Desert, and there, surrounded by endless sand dunes that rolled like frozen ocean waves beneath a canopy of stars so thick they seemed to pulse with ancient light, Jesus appeared before me with eyes that held both infinite compassion and terrible urgency, and he spoke words that shattered everything I thought I understood. Watch what happens next. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it. But you've been marked for this moment, chosen to receive what I'm about to share, and I'm begging you, don't turn away. My name is Jonathan Roumie. You know me as the man who portrays Jesus in The Chosen, but what happened to me in that desert wasn't acting. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't the product of exhaustion or spiritual delusion. It was the most real thing I've ever experienced, and it's changed everything. Before I go any further, I need you to do something. Right now, in the comments below, I need you to type your prayer requests. Don't hold back. Whatever you're facing, financial devastation, broken relationships, health crises, spiritual warfare, type it out. Because what Jesus revealed to me in that desert is directly connected to your breakthrough, and I'm not just saying that. There's a reason you're watching this video at this exact moment. The algorithm didn't bring you here. God did. And if you're a true believer, if you're someone who wants to go deeper than Sunday morning Christianity, deeper than religious performance, deeper than the comfortable faith that's killing the Western church, then subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell. Because what I'm about to share over these next few nights will separate the casual observers from the truly hungry. Jesus told me specifically, not everyone will have ears to hear this. But you do. I can feel it. Let me take you back to that night. I'd been in Los Angeles, finishing some work on the show, but for 3 days, I couldn't sleep. Not insomnia. This was different. It was like a divine restlessness, a holy agitation in my spirit that made my apartment feel like a cage. I'd pray, and instead of peace, I'd feel this overwhelming urge to go somewhere, to get out, to find silence. At 1:30 a.m. on January 9th, I got in my car with no destination in mind. I just drove east, away from the city lights, away from the noise, away from everything familiar. The 10 freeway stretched before me like a ribbon of asphalt leading into darkness, and I followed it as if pulled by invisible hands. By 2:30 a.m., I was deep in the Mojave. I'd taken an exit I'd never noticed before, followed a dirt road that seemed to appear out of nowhere, and found myself parking at the base of a massive dune system that rose against the night sky like the backbone of some sleeping giant. The temperature had dropped to maybe 45 degrees. I could see my breath. I grabbed a jacket from the back seat and started walking, my boots crunching on sand that felt like crushed diamonds under the starlight. And the stars. God, the stars. Living in LA, you forget what the night sky actually looks like. Out here, away from light pollution, the Milky Way stretched overhead like a river of light, billions of stars creating a luminous band that seemed close enough to touch. The silence was absolute. Not the silence of an empty room, but the silence of vast, ancient spaces, the kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat, your own breathing, the blood moving through your veins, the kind of silence that makes you feel simultaneously insignificant and deeply seen. I climbed. I don't know why. I just knew I needed to get higher, to get to the top of the largest dune I could see. My legs burned. Sand slipped beneath my feet with every step, making the climb twice as hard. But I kept going, driven by that same inexplicable urgency that had pulled me from my apartment hours earlier. When I reached the summit, I stood there gasping, hands on my knees, looking out over an ocean of sand dunes that stretched to the horizon in every direction. The wind had picked up, not strong but steady, carrying with it the scent of sage and something else, something I can only describe as ancient, like the smell of stone and time itself. That's when I felt it, a presence, not behind me, not beside me, everywhere, in the air, in the sand, in the starlight itself. The temperature seemed to shift, becoming simultaneously warmer and more electric. The hair on my arms stood up, my breath caught in my throat. And then I saw him. Jesus didn't appear gradually. He was simply there, standing 10 feet in front of me, as real and solid as the sand beneath my feet. He wore simple robes that moved in the wind, but his face was both exactly as I'd imagined it and completely beyond imagination. His eyes held galaxies. His presence radiated a love so intense it was almost painful, like standing too close to a fire that warms and overwhelms simultaneously. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice was like nothing I can adequately describe. It was gentle, but carried the weight of mountains. It was intimate, but filled the entire desert. It was the voice I'd tried to channel in The Chosen, but hearing it now, I realized I'd never come close. I fell to my knees, not because I decided to, but because my legs simply gave out. Tears were already streaming down my face. "Lord," I managed to whisper, "why am I here?" He stepped closer, and I could see his feet were bare, leaving no prints in the sand. He knelt before me, bringing his face level with mine, and placed his hand on my shoulder. The touch was real. I felt the weight of it, the warmth of it, the absolute reality of it. "I brought you here because you need to see what happens next," he said, "and you need to tell them." "Tell who? Tell them what?" His expression shifted then, and I saw something in his eyes that terrified me. Not anger. Jesus wasn't angry, but grief. Deep, profound grief, mixed with an urgency that made my chest tighten. "The church thinks they know what's coming," he said. "They think they're prepared. They think they're watching. But they're watching the wrong things, Jonathan. They're looking at politics and prophecy charts and signs in the news, but they're missing what's happening right in front of them." He stood and gestured to the desert around us. "Look at this place. What do you see?" I looked. Sand dunes, stars, emptiness. "I see wilderness." "You see what was once an ocean," he said. "Millions of years ago, this entire region was underwater. Life teemed here, and then the water receded, the climate changed, and it became this, beautiful in its own way, but barren, transformed into something completely different." He turned back to me, and his eyes were blazing now with an intensity that made me want to look away, but I couldn't. "That's what's happening to my church," he said. "A transformation is coming, is already here, that will separate the living water from the dry sand, and most of my people don't see it. They're so busy arguing about worship styles and political positions and theological minutiae that they're missing the shift happening in the spiritual realm right now at this very moment." "What shift?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He extended his hand toward the horizon, and suddenly the desert wasn't empty anymore. I saw, and I don't know if this was a vision or if reality itself was being peeled back, I saw millions of people. They filled the desert like grains of sand stretching as far as I could see. They were in churches, in homes, in cars, in offices. They were praying, reading Bibles, attending services, posting scripture on social media. "These are my people," Jesus said, "the ones who call themselves by my name." Then he waved his hand again, and I saw something that made my blood run cold. A wind began to blow across that vast crowd, not a physical wind, but something spiritual, something I could see moving like a wave. And as it passed over the people, something happened. Some of them began to glow, not brightly at first, but with a soft, steady light that grew stronger as the wind continued. But others, God help me, so many others, began to fade, not disappear, but become translucent, like ghosts, like shadows of themselves. "What's happening to them?" I asked, horror rising in my throat. "The separation," Jesus said quietly. "The division between those who know me and those who only know about me. Between those who've built their faith on the rock and those who've built on sand. Between those who are filled with living water and those who've become dry desert, religious in form but dead in spirit." I watched as the glowing ones began to move toward each other, forming clusters of light in the darkness. They were weeping, worshiping, reaching out to those who were fading. But the fading ones couldn't see them anymore. They kept going through the motions. I could see their mouths moving in prayers, their hands raised in worship, but it was like watching a recording, a performance with no one home inside. "When?" I whispered. "When is this happening?" Jesus looked at me with those infinite eyes. "It's already begun. The wind started blowing 3 years ago, but it's accelerating now. What happens next, what I'm telling you to watch for, is the manifestation of what's already true in the spirit, the visible separation of what's been spiritually separated for years." He knelt beside me again, and I could smell something like cinnamon and myrrh, ancient and holy. "Jonathan, I didn't bring you into the desert to scare you. I brought you here to wake you up, to wake them up." He gestured toward where I knew civilization lay, beyond the dunes. "Because there's still time. The wind is blowing, but it's not finished. Those who are fading can still turn back. Those who've become desert can still find water. But they have to want it. They have to choose it. and they're running out of time to make that choice. The vision faded, and we were alone again in the desert, just the two of us under the stars. But everything felt different now. The air felt heavier. The silence felt louder. The stars seemed to be watching, waiting. What do I tell them? I asked. How do I make them understand? Jesus stood and looked out over the desert, his profile sharp against the starlight. Tell them what you've seen. Tell them that what happens next isn't about politics or pandemics or persecution, though those things will come. What happens next is about the revealing, the unveiling of what's real and what's pretend, the separation of the wheat from the chaff, the sheep from the goats, the wise virgins from the foolish ones. He turned back to me. Tell them that I'm not looking for perfect people. I'm looking for hungry people, desperate people, people who know they're dying of thirst and are willing to do whatever it takes to find water. Tell them that religion won't save them, church attendance won't save them, theological knowledge won't save them. Only I can save them, but they have to actually want me, not just the benefits I offer, not just the fire insurance of heaven, but me. Relationship, reality, living water that transforms desert into garden. The wind picked up then, stronger now, whipping sand around us in small cyclones. The temperature dropped further, and I shivered despite my jacket. I'm going to show you more, Jesus said. Tomorrow night, come back here, same time. There's more you need to see, more you need to understand. What I've shown you tonight is just the beginning. Will you be here? I asked, desperate, not wanting him to leave. He smiled then, and it was like the sun rising. Jonathan, I'm always here. You just don't always have eyes to see me. But yes, I'll meet you here again. We have 3 nights together in this desert, just like I had 40 days here long ago. 3 nights to show you what's coming, what's already here, and what you need to do about it. He began to fade then, not walking away, but simply becoming less solid, less visible, like morning mist burning off in sunlight. But his voice remained, echoing across the dunes. Watch what happens next. Tell them to watch. Tell them to wake up. Tell them the wind is blowing, and they need to decide right now which side of the separation they want to be on. And then he was gone. I stayed on that dune until sunrise, which came around 6:30 a.m. I watched the sky transform from black to deep blue to purple to pink to gold. I watched the stars fade and the desert come alive with color, reds and oranges and browns I hadn't been able to see in the darkness. I watched the temperature rise and felt the cold night wind give way to the still warmth of morning. But I was changed. Something inside me had shifted, had been rearranged, had been set on fire. I'm recording this just hours after returning home. I haven't slept. I can't sleep because I know I have to go back tonight. I have to hear the rest, and I have to tell you, listen to me carefully. If you're watching this video, you're meant to see it. You're meant to hear this message. The fact that you've made it this far, that you're still reading these words, means something. It means you're hungry. It means you're desperate. It means some part of you knows that what you've been settling for isn't enough. Jesus said to watch what happens next. I'm telling you the same thing. But more than that, I'm telling you to examine yourself right now. Are you glowing or fading? Are you filled with living water or have you become dry desert? Are you in relationship with Jesus or just in religion about Jesus? These aren't comfortable questions. They're not meant to be, because what's coming, what's already here, isn't comfortable. It's a separation, a revealing, a manifestation of truth that's going to shock the religious world. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to that desert. I'm going to hear the rest of what Jesus wants to show me, and tomorrow I'll share it with you. But today, right now, I need you to do something. I need you to get alone with God, really alone, not just a quick prayer between tasks, and ask him this question. Am I really yours? Do I really know you? Or have I been fooling myself? And then listen, actually listen, because he'll answer. He always answers the truly hungry. Drop your prayer requests in the comments. Subscribe if you're serious about this journey, and come back tomorrow night for part 2. Because what Jesus showed me on that first night was just the beginning. The wind is blowing. The separation has started. And you need to decide right now which side you're on. I barely made it through the day. After returning from the desert that first morning, I tried to function normally. I answered emails. I took calls about the show. I went through the motions of ordinary life. But nothing felt ordinary anymore. Everything felt thin, translucent, like a veil had been pulled back and I could see through the surface of reality to something deeper, more urgent, more real. By 1 a.m. on January 10th, I was already in my car driving east again. I couldn't wait. That same pull, that same divine urgency, had been building in my chest all day like a pressure I couldn't release. I needed to get back to that desert. I needed to hear more. The drive felt shorter this time, as if the distance itself had contracted, or maybe I was just driving faster, more recklessly, desperate to return to that sacred space where heaven had touched earth just 24 hours earlier. I arrived at 2:15 a.m., parked in the exact same spot, and began the climb up the same massive dune. But tonight was different. Tonight the wind was already blowing, strong, steady, coming from the east and carrying with it that same ancient scent of sage and stone. The temperature was colder, maybe 38 degrees, and the stars seemed even brighter, if that was possible. The Milky Way stretched overhead like a cosmic river, and I felt like I was climbing toward it, ascending into something holy and terrifying. My breath came in ragged gasps, visible in the cold air. My legs burned with the effort of climbing through sand that shifted and slid beneath every step. But I pushed harder, faster, driven by a hunger I'd never experienced before. It wasn't just curiosity, it was need, desperate, aching need to be in his presence again, to hear his voice, to understand what he'd started to reveal. When I reached the summit, I didn't have to wait. He was already there. Jesus stood at the edge of the dune, his robes whipping in the wind, his hair moving like dark water, but tonight he looked different, more intense. His eyes held something fiercer, more urgent. The grief I'd seen the night before had deepened into something that looked almost like holy anger, not at me, but at something, someone, some force I couldn't yet see. "You came back," he said, and there was approval in his voice, warmth that cut through the cold wind. "I couldn't stay away," I said, dropping to my knees in the sand. "Lord, I haven't been able to think about anything else. What you showed me last night, the separation, the fading ones, I need to understand more. I need to know what to tell them." He walked toward me, and with each step, the wind seemed to intensify. Sand swirled around his feet in small vortices, creating patterns that looked almost like words in a language I couldn't read. "Tonight, I'm going to show you why this is happening," he said. "Last night, I showed you what. Tonight, you'll understand why. And Jonathan—" He paused, kneeling before me again, his face inches from mine. "This is going to be harder to hear, because it's going to challenge everything the modern church has taught you about me, about faith, about what I actually want from my people." I nodded, bracing myself. "I'm ready." "No," he said gently, "you're not, but you're willing. That's enough." He stood and gestured to the vast expanse of desert around us. In the starlight, I could see the dunes rolling away in every direction, an ocean of sand frozen in mid-wave. The wind had carved intricate patterns on their surfaces, ripples and ridges that caught the light and created shadows, making the landscape look alive, breathing. "Look at this desert," Jesus said. "What made it this way?" I thought about what he'd told me the night before. "You said it used to be an ocean, the water left, the climate changed." "Yes, but why did the water leave?" I shook my head. "I don't know. Natural processes, geological shifts." "The water left," he said, his voice carrying over the wind, "because the source was cut off. Rivers that once fed this region were diverted. Rainfall patterns changed. The connection to the ocean was severed. And without that constant source of water, without that living connection to the deep, everything dried up. It didn't happen overnight. It took years, decades, centuries, but eventually, the ocean became desert." He turned to face me fully, and his eyes were blazing now with that fierce intensity I'd seen when he first appeared. "That's what's happened to my church, Jonathan. The source has been cut off, not by me. I'm still here, still pouring out, still offering living water to anyone who's truly thirsty. But my people have diverted the rivers, they've changed the patterns, they've severed the connection, and they've done it so gradually, so subtly, that most of them don't even realize they're dying of thirst in the middle of a desert of their own making." The wind suddenly intensified, and I had to shield my face from the stinging sand. When I looked up again, the desert had transformed. I was seeing that vision again, millions of people filling the landscape, the church in all its forms and expressions. But now I could see more detail, more context. I saw massive buildings, beautiful church campuses with state-of-the-art sound systems and lighting rigs. I saw thousands of people gathered, hands raised, voices lifted in worship songs that sounded beautiful, professional, perfectly produced. But as I watched, I realized something horrifying. The music was loud, but there was no presence. The words were about Jesus, but he wasn't there. The people were singing about hunger and thirst and desperation, but their faces showed none of those things. They looked comfortable, entertained, satisfied with the performance. Do you see it? Jesus asked, his voice cutting through the vision. They've replaced relationship with ritual. They've replaced my presence with programs. They've replaced the dangerous, wild, unpredictable movement of my spirit with carefully choreographed services that start and end on time and never make anyone too uncomfortable. The scene shifted. Now I saw small groups, home churches, people gathered in living rooms and coffee shops. These looked more authentic, more real. People were crying, praying, sharing their struggles. But as I watched longer, I saw the same pattern emerging. The conversations became formulaic, the prayers became repetitive, the vulnerability became performance. They were going through the motions of intimacy without actually being intimate. Even those who've left the big churches, who've rejected the religious system, many of them have just created smaller versions of the same thing, Jesus said. Different packaging, same problem. They're still trying to create connection through human effort instead of surrendering to divine encounter. Another shift. Now I saw individuals, people alone in their rooms, in their cars, in quiet moments. Some were reading Bibles, but their eyes glazed over the words, reading out of obligation rather than hunger. Some were praying, but their prayers were wish lists, demands, negotiations, talking at God rather than with Him. Some were listening to worship music, but they were multitasking, distracted, using it as background noise rather than as a doorway to His presence. They've learned to function without me, Jesus said, and the grief in His voice was so profound it made my chest ache. They've learned to do church without my presence. They've learned to pray without expecting me to answer. They've learned to read scripture without expecting me to speak. They've learned to worship without expecting me to show up. And the tragedy, the absolute tragedy, Jonathan, is that they don't even realize what they've lost. They think this is normal. They think this is what faith is supposed to look like. The vision faded, and we were alone again on the dune. But now I could see something I hadn't noticed before. In the sand at my feet there were tiny plants, desert vegetation that had somehow found a way to survive in this harsh environment. They were small, tough, their leaves thick and waxy to retain moisture. They'd adapted to the desert. They'd learned to survive on almost nothing. That's what's happened to my people, Jesus said, pointing to the plants. They've adapted to the desert. They've learned to survive on drops of water when I'm offering them rivers. They've learned to be satisfied with barely alive when I came to give them abundant life. They've mistaken survival for thriving, existence for living, religion for relationship. He sat down in the sand and I sat beside him. The wind had calmed slightly, but the cold was seeping through my jacket, making me shiver. He noticed and moved closer, and immediately I felt warmth radiating from him, supernatural and comforting. Let me tell you what I'm not saying, he continued. I'm not saying that everyone in the church is fake, or that every service is dead, or that every prayer is empty. There are still those who burn with genuine hunger. There are still those who've maintained the connection to the source. There are still those who know the difference between my presence and religious performance. But Jonathan, his voice dropped to almost a whisper, they're becoming the minority. And that's why the separation is happening. That's why the wind is blowing. Because I'm calling out the truly hungry from among the merely satisfied. I'm separating those who want me from those who just want what I can do for them. I thought about my own life, my own faith journey. Lord, I have to ask, am I one of the fading ones? Have I become desert? Because I play you on television. But that doesn't mean, he put his hand on my shoulder, stopping me. Jonathan, if you were fading, you wouldn't be here. The fading ones don't feel the pull. They don't experience the holy restlessness. They don't drive into the desert at 2 a.m. because they're desperate for more. The fact that you're here, that you're asking these questions, that you're willing to hear hard truth, that's evidence of life, not death. Relief flooded through me, but it was quickly replaced by a different kind of fear. But I know people, friends, family, people I love, who I think might be fading, people who seem satisfied with desert Christianity. How do I reach them? What do I tell them? Jesus stood and walked to the edge of the dune, looking out over the dark expanse. You tell them the truth. You tell them that what they've settled for isn't what I died to give them. You tell them that church attendance isn't relationship. You tell them that theological knowledge isn't intimacy. You tell them that they can quote scripture and sing worship songs and serve in ministries and still be dying of thirst because they've never actually drunk from the source. He turned back to me, and now his face was illuminated by starlight in a way that made him look both ancient and ageless, both fully human and completely divine. Here's what most of them don't understand, he said. They think I'm looking for people who have it all together, people who pray perfectly, who never doubt, who never struggle. who never fail. So they perform, they pretend, they put on masks and play the part of good Christians while inside they're dying, drowning, desperate, and all the while I'm standing there with living water, begging them to just be honest, to just admit they're thirsty, to just stop performing and start receiving. The wind picked up again, and with it came something new, a sound. At first I thought it was just the wind whistling through the dunes, but as I listened more carefully, I realized it was voices. Thousands of voices, maybe millions, all crying out at once. Some were praying, some were weeping, some were calling his name. But they all had one thing in common. They were desperate. "Do you hear that?" Jesus asked. "Yes." "Who are they?" "The hungry ones, the thirsty ones, the ones who know they're dying in the desert and are finally willing to admit it. They're scattered across the earth, in churches and outside of churches, in every nation and culture and denomination. They're the ones the wind is gathering. They're the ones who are starting to glow because they've stopped pretending and started pursuing. They've stopped performing and started pressing in." He walked back to me and pulled me to my feet. "Jonathan, here's what I need you to understand. What happens next isn't about judgment, it's about mercy. I'm separating the wheat from the chaff, not to destroy the chaff, but to wake it up. I'm allowing the comfortable to become uncomfortable, the satisfied to become desperate, the religious to become real. Because as long as they think they're fine, they'll never seek the water they actually need." Another vision opened before me. I saw churches splitting, not over theology or politics, but over hunger. I saw people walking away from comfortable congregations because they were starving for something real. I saw others staying, but beginning to pray with a desperation that made their leaders uncomfortable. I saw home groups forming where people actually told the truth about their struggles instead of maintaining the facade of having it all together. I saw individuals spending hours in prayer, weeping, worshiping, encountering God in ways they'd never experienced before. But I also saw the other side. I saw churches that continued with business as usual, wondering why people were leaving but never asking the hard questions. I saw leaders more concerned with attendance numbers than with God's presence. I saw people who heard the call to go deeper but chose comfort instead, who felt the pull toward something more but decided the cost was too high. "The separation isn't about who's in and who's out," Jesus said. "It's about who's hungry and who's satisfied, who's desperate and who's comfortable, who wants me and who just wants the benefits of knowing me." And Jonathan, here's the hardest truth. Some people will choose the desert. They'll choose the familiar dryness over the unknown depths. They'll choose the safety of religion over the danger of relationship, not because they're bad people, but because they're scared. Because real relationship with me requires death. Death to control, death to performance, death to the false self they've built, and many people would rather stay alive in the desert than die to find the ocean. I felt tears streaming down my face, freezing in the cold air. How do I make them understand? How do I help them see what they're missing? "You can't make anyone understand," he said gently. "You can only testify to what you've seen. You can only share what you've experienced. You can only point to the water and say, 'I've drunk from this, and it's changed everything.' But they have to choose to drink. They have to choose to leave the desert. They have to choose to stop surviving and start thriving." He paused, and his expression shifted to something even more intense. "But here's what you can tell them. Time is running out. Not because I'm impatient or because I'm giving up on them, but because the season is shifting. The wind is blowing stronger. The separation is accelerating. And there's coming a day, soon, sooner than most people think, when the choice will be made permanent. When those who've chosen the desert will be left in the desert, and those who've chosen the water will be swept up in a flood of my presence that will transform everything." The temperature seemed to drop even further, and I pulled my jacket tighter. My teeth were chattering now, but I didn't want to leave. I didn't want this encounter to end. "Tomorrow night," Jesus said, "I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to show you the fullness of what's coming, both the glory and the terror of it. I'm going to show you what happens when the separation is complete, when the wheat is fully separated from the chaff, when the sheep are divided from the goats. But tonight, I need you to sit with what I've already shown you. I need you to let it sink deep into your spirit. I need you to examine your own heart and ask yourself, am I truly hungry? Am I truly desperate? Or have I too adapted to the desert?" He began to fade then, but slower this time, as if reluctant to leave. His voice echoed across the dunes. "Tell them, Jonathan. Tell them that I'm not looking for perfect people. I'm looking for thirsty people. Tell them that the water is still flowing, The source is still available, the connection can still be restored, but they have to want it, they have to choose it, and they're running out of time to make that choice. And then he was gone. I stayed on that dune for another hour, maybe more. I wept, I prayed. I examined my own heart with a ruthlessness I'd never applied before. I asked myself the hard questions. Was I truly in relationship with him, or was I just playing a role? Was I truly hungry, or had I become satisfied with the crumbs of occasional spiritual experience? Was I willing to pay the cost of going deeper, or was I too choosing the safety of the shallow end? The sun began to rise around 6:45 a.m., painting the desert in shades of gold and amber and rose. The cold night wind gave way to stillness, and the temperature began to climb. I watched the transformation of the landscape as light revealed details that had been hidden in darkness, the intricate patterns in the sand, the subtle variations in color, the way the dunes cast long shadows that shifted and changed as the sun climbed higher. And I realized, that's what Jesus is doing. He's bringing light to reveal what's been hidden. He's exposing the patterns, the variations, the shadows, not to shame or condemn, but to wake up, to call out, to separate the real from the pretend, so that the real can become even more real. I'm recording this just hours after returning home again. I'm exhausted but wired, tired but unable to rest, because I know what's coming tomorrow night. I know he's going to show me the culmination, the fullness, the final revelation of what happens next. But today, right now, I need you to hear this. You have a choice to make. You can continue in comfortable Christianity, in desert faith, in religion without relationship, or you can choose to go deeper. You can choose to admit you're thirsty. You can choose to stop performing and start pursuing. The wind is blowing stronger. The separation is accelerating, and you need to decide right now. Are you hungry enough to leave the desert? Are you desperate enough to seek the source? Are you willing to die to everything familiar so you can find everything real? In the comments, I need you to be honest. Don't give me religious answers. Tell me the truth. Are you satisfied with your faith right now, or are you starving for something more? Are you experiencing God's presence regularly, or have you adapted to his absence? Are you truly in relationship with Jesus, or are you just going through religious motions? Your honesty might save your life. Your vulnerability might be the crack that lets the water in. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to that desert one final time. I'm going to hear the rest. I'm going to see what happens when the separation is complete, and then I'm going to tell you everything. But today, examine yourself, ask the hard questions, and decide, desert or ocean, survival or abundance, religion or relationship. The choice is yours, but the time to choose is running out. I didn't sleep at all between the second and third night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the vision, millions of people fading, becoming translucent, going through the motions of faith while the life drained out of them. I heard Jesus' words echoing in my mind. Time is running out. I felt the weight of what he'd shown me pressing down on my chest like a physical force, making it hard to breathe. By midnight on January 11th, I was already dressed and ready. I sat in my apartment, watching the clock, waiting for the moment when I could leave without seeming insane for departing so early. But at 12:47 a.m., I couldn't wait anymore. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. The drive east felt different this time. The highway seemed darker, emptier, as if the world itself was holding its breath. There were no other cars on the road, no lights in the distance, just me and the asphalt and the darkness pressing in from all sides. I drove faster than I should have, pushing 80, then 90, desperate to get back to that sacred space where heaven had been touching earth for the past 2 nights. I arrived at 1:52 a.m. The moment I stepped out of my car, I knew something was different. The air felt electric, charged with a presence that made every hair on my body stand up. The wind was already blowing, not the steady wind of the previous night, but gusts that came in waves, powerful enough to make me stagger. The temperature had dropped even further, maybe down to 35 degrees, and the cold cut through my jacket like it wasn't even there. But it was the sky that stopped me in my tracks. The stars weren't just bright tonight, they were blazing. The Milky Way looked like a river of fire overhead, and I could see colors I'd never noticed before. Blues and purples and greens swirling among the white light. It was as if the veil between heaven and earth had grown thinner, as if I was seeing through to something beyond the physical realm. I started climbing the dune, but this time it felt different. Each step felt heavier, more significant, as if I was ascending not just a hill of sand but a holy mountain. My legs burned, my lungs ached. The wind pushed against me, making every step a battle, but I kept climbing, driven by a mixture of desperation and dread, knowing that whatever Jesus was going to show me tonight would change everything. When I reached the summit, I fell to my knees, gasping for breath. The wind was so strong now that I had to brace myself to keep from being blown backward. Sand whipped around me in spirals and vortices, creating patterns in the air that looked almost like words, like messages written in a language older than human speech. And then the wind stopped, completely, instantly, as if someone had flipped a switch. The silence that followed was so profound it was almost painful. No wind, no distant sounds of civilization. Nothing, just absolute, complete silence that seemed to swallow even the sound of my own breathing. And in that silence, he appeared. But this time, Jesus didn't just appear before me. He appeared in the sky itself. His form was massive, towering over the desert like a colossus, his face visible among the stars, his eyes blazing with a light that made the Milky Way look dim by comparison. His presence filled the entire landscape, and I realized with a shock that made my heart stop. This was just a glimpse. This was just the smallest fraction of his true glory, filtered down to something my human mind could process without shattering completely. Jonathan, his voice boomed across the desert, and I felt it in my bones, in my blood, in the very atoms of my being. Tonight, I show you the end of the separation. Tonight, you see what happens when the wheat is fully divided from the chaff, when the sheep are separated from the goats, when those who know me are revealed, and those who only knew about me are exposed. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I could only kneel there in the sand, trembling, tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed by the magnitude of his presence. The vision opened before me, but this time it wasn't just something I was watching, it was something I was inside of, experiencing, living through. I was somehow both myself and everyone else simultaneously, seeing through millions of eyes, feeling through millions of hearts. I saw the earth from above, spinning in space, covered in lights that represented people, billions of them, scattered across every continent, every nation, every culture. And among those lights, I could see the ones who called themselves Christians, who identified as followers of Jesus. They numbered in the hundreds of millions, maybe more than 2 billion, spread across the globe in churches and homes and secret gatherings. Then I saw the wind begin to blow. It started as a gentle breeze, barely noticeable, moving across the earth like a whisper. But as it touched each person who claimed to follow Jesus, something happened. Some of them began to glow brighter, their light intensifying until it was almost blinding. But others, God help me, so many others, began to flicker and fade, their light dimming until it was barely visible. "This is what's happening right now," Jesus said, his voice gentler now but still carrying the weight of mountains. "The wind of my spirit is blowing across the earth, and it's revealing what's real and what's pretend. It's exposing the difference between those who have oil in their lamps and those who've run dry, between those who've built on the rock and those who've built on sand." The wind intensified, and now I could see more detail. The ones who were glowing brighter were changing. They were being drawn together, pulled toward each other by an invisible force. Geographic boundaries didn't matter. Denominational labels didn't matter. They were being connected by something deeper than physical proximity, by the Spirit Himself, weaving them into a unified body that transcended all human divisions. I saw Catholics and Protestants embracing. I saw Pentecostals and Presbyterians worshiping together. I saw house church believers and megachurch attenders kneeling side by side. All the things that had divided them, theology, tradition, style, preference, were burning away in the presence of the one they all truly loved. What remained was pure, unified, powerful, the actual bride of Christ, prepared and ready. But the ones who were fading, I saw them too, and it broke my heart. They were still in their churches, still going through the motions. They were still singing the songs, still raising their hands, still saying the prayers, but there was no life in it anymore. They were like actors who'd forgotten they were performing, going through a script they'd memorized so well they didn't even have to think about it. And the tragedy, the absolute tragedy, was that most of them didn't even realize what was happening. They thought they were fine. They thought they were saved, secure, set for eternity, but they'd never actually known Him. They'd known about Him. They'd known the doctrine, the theology, the religious system, but they'd never known Him. "Jesus," I cried out, my voice breaking, "isn't there anything that can wake them up? Isn't there any way to reach them before it's too late?" His face appeared before me again, closer now, and I could see tears streaming down his cheeks. Jonathan, I've been trying to wake them up for years. I've sent prophets and teachers. I've allowed trials and difficulties. I've whispered to them in the night and shouted to them through circumstances. But they've learned to ignore my voice. They've learned to explain away my conviction. They've learned to be comfortable in their religion, and comfort is the most dangerous place a believer can be. The vision shifted, and now I was seeing specific examples, real people in real situations. I saw a pastor standing before his congregation, preaching a message he'd preached 100 times before. The words were biblically accurate, the delivery was polished, but there was no anointing, no presence, no power. He was speaking about God without speaking from God, and his congregation sat there nodding along, taking notes, completely unaware that they were starving in the middle of a feast because they'd settled for information instead of transformation. I saw a worship team leading songs about hunger and desperation and encounter, but their faces showed none of those things. They were professionals doing a job, musicians performing a set, artists showcasing their talent. The songs were about Jesus, but he wasn't in the room, and the congregation sang along, hands raised, eyes closed, thinking they were worshiping when they were really just participating in a well-produced concert. I saw small groups meeting in homes, going through Bible studies and prayer lists with mechanical precision. They asked each other, "How can I pray for you?" and received the same surface-level answers they always received. Pray for my job situation. Pray for my health. Pray for my kids. But no one ever said, "Pray for me because I'm dying inside. Pray for me because I don't actually know if I really know God. Pray for me because I'm terrified that I've been faking it for so long I don't know what's real anymore." Do you see the pattern? Jesus asked. They've created a form of godliness but denied its power. They've learned to do church without me, to pray without expecting me to answer, to worship without expecting me to show up, and they've done it for so long that they don't even remember what it feels like when I'm actually present. The vision shifted again, and now I saw what was coming, the full manifestation of the separation. I saw a moment, I don't know if it was days or months or years away, but I knew it was coming, when the division would become visible, undeniable, complete. In that moment, those who were glowing would suddenly be transformed. I saw them caught up in a wave of glory that changed everything about them. Their faces shone like the sun. Their bodies became like light itself. They were still human, but somehow more than human, fully alive in a way that made their previous existence look like sleep. And they were together, millions of them, maybe billions, from every tribe and tongue and nation, unified in perfect love and perfect worship. But those who had been fading simply stopped. The light went out completely, and they were left standing in their churches, in their homes, in their religious activities, suddenly aware, horribly, devastatingly aware of what they'd missed. They'd had every opportunity. They'd heard every invitation. They'd been offered the living water again and again, but they'd chosen the desert. They'd chosen comfort over cost. They'd chosen religion over relationship. And now it was too late. I saw their faces, the shock, the horror, the desperate realization of what they'd lost. I saw them crying out, "Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we cast out demons in your name? Didn't we do many mighty works in your name?" And I heard his response, and it was the most terrible thing I'd ever heard. "I never knew you. Depart from me. Not I used to know you, but you fell away. Not I knew you, but you messed up too badly. But I never knew you." They'd never actually been in relationship with him. They'd been in relationship with religion, with church, with Christian culture, with the idea of Jesus. But they'd never known him, and he'd never known them. "Stop!" I screamed, unable to bear it anymore. "Please stop. I can't watch this. I can't see this." The vision faded, and I was back on the dune, alone with Jesus. But he was no longer towering in the sky. He was kneeling beside me, his hand on my shoulder, his face close to mine, and he was weeping. "Do you think this brings me joy?" he asked, his voice thick with grief. "Do you think I want this outcome? Jonathan, I died to prevent this. I gave everything, my glory, my comfort, my very life, so that everyone could know me, could be in relationship with me, could experience the fullness of life I came to bring. But I won't force anyone. I won't override their free will. If they choose religion over relationship, if they choose comfort over cost, if they choose the desert over the ocean, I have to honor that choice, even though it breaks my heart, even though I'd give anything to change their minds." He stood and pulled me to my feet. The wind had started blowing again, but gentler now, warmer. The sky was beginning to lighten in the east. Not sunrise yet, but the first hint of dawn, that deep blue that comes before the light. Here's what I need you to understand, Jesus said. What I've shown you isn't set in stone. The separation is happening, yes, the wind is blowing, yes, but there's still time. There are still people who can wake up, who can turn from the desert and run toward the water. There are still those who are fading, who can choose to burn bright again. But they have to choose it, they have to want it, and they're running out of time. He turned to face the coming dawn, and I stood beside him, watching as the darkness slowly gave way to light. The church thinks the end times are about politics and wars and natural disasters, he continued. And yes, those things will come, but the real crisis, the real judgment is this, the revealing of what's real and what's fake, the separation of those who know me from those who only know about me. And Jonathan, it's not going to happen the way most people expect. It's not going to be a single dramatic moment where I appear in the clouds and everyone suddenly sees the truth. It's going to be a process that's already begun, where the pressure increases, the cost rises, the comfort disappears, and people have to decide, do I really believe this? Do I really know him? Or have I just been playing church? The sun broke over the horizon then, and the entire desert was suddenly bathed in golden light. The temperature began to rise immediately, and I could feel the warmth on my face, chasing away the cold that had seeped into my bones during the long night. In the days ahead, Jesus said, everything that can be shaken will be shaken, denominations will split, churches will close or transform, leaders will fall or rise to new levels of anointing, believers will either go deeper than they've ever gone or will walk away entirely. There will be no more middle ground, no more lukewarm, no more comfortable Christianity. People will either be on fire or they'll be ice cold, and I'll take the fire every time. He turned to me, and his eyes held both fierce love and urgent warning. Tell them, Jonathan. Tell them everything you've seen. Tell them that I'm not looking for perfect people. I'm looking for desperate people. Tell them that I don't care about their past failures or their present struggles. I care about their hunger. I care about their willingness to be real with me. I care about whether they actually want me or just want what I can give them. The sun was fully up now, and in the daylight, I could see the desert in all its harsh beauty. The dunes stretched away in every direction, their surfaces rippled and textured by the wind. In the distance, I could see mountains, their peaks still dusted with snow. And scattered across the landscape were those same small desert plants I'd noticed before, tough, resilient, surviving on almost nothing. Those plants, Jesus said, following my gaze, they've adapted to the desert. They've learned to survive. But Jonathan, I didn't create my people to survive. I created them to thrive. I came to give abundant life, not barely getting by life. And the tragedy is that so many of my people have settled for survival when I'm offering them so much more. He began to fade then, but slower than before, as if savoring these last moments. Tomorrow, you rest, you process, you let everything I've shown you sink deep into your spirit, and then you tell them. You tell them everything. You tell them that the wind is blowing, the separation is happening, and they need to decide right now, desert or ocean, religion or relationship, survival or abundance. His voice echoed across the dunes as he disappeared. Tell them to watch what happens next, because what's coming will separate the pretenders from the real, the religious from the relational, the wheat from the chaff, and when it's over, when the separation is complete, there will be a bride without spot or wrinkle, a church that's actually the church, a people who don't just know about me, but who actually know me. Tell them, Jonathan. Tell them while there's still time. And then he was gone. I stood there on that dune as the sun climbed higher and the temperature rose from cold to warm to hot. I watched the desert come alive with light and color. I listened to the wind and the silence and the sound of my own breathing, and I let everything I'd seen, everything I'd heard, everything I'd experienced over these 3 nights settle into the deepest parts of my soul. I didn't leave until almost 10 a.m. By then, the desert was blazing hot, the temperature well over 80 degrees. The cold of the night seemed like a distant memory, but the encounters, those were seared into my mind and heart with a permanence that I knew would never fade. As I drove back toward Los Angeles, I kept thinking about what Jesus had said, tell them while there's still time. And I realized that's exactly what I had to do. Not just share a nice spiritual story or an interesting experience, but sound an alarm, issue a warning, extend an invitation. Because what I had seen wasn't just about the future, it was about right now. The separation is already happening, the wind is already blowing, and every person who calls themselves a Christian needs to ask themselves the hard question, Am I really his? Do I really know him? Or have I just been playing church, going through religious motions, surviving in the desert when he's been offering me the ocean all along? I'm recording this final part just hours after returning home. My voice is hoarse from weeping. My body is exhausted from 3 nights of intense spiritual encounter, but my spirit is on fire with an urgency I've never felt before. Tomorrow I'll tell you what you need to do. I'll give you the practical steps, the specific actions, the clear path forward. But tonight I need you to sit with what I've shared. I need you to let it sink in. I need you to ask yourself the hard questions. Are you glowing or fading? Are you in relationship or just in religion? Are you desperate for more or satisfied with what you have? The wind is blowing, the separation is happening, and you need to decide right now which side you're on. I'm sitting here now, 3 days after that final encounter in the desert, and I still can't fully process everything I experienced. My hands are shaking as I record this, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility. Because Jesus didn't show me these things just for my own benefit. He showed me so I could tell you, so I could sound the alarm, so I could extend the invitation while there's still time. It's January 14th, 2026, and I need to tell you what happens next, not what Jesus is going to do, but what you need to do. Because everything I've shared over these past 3 nights means nothing if it doesn't lead to action, if it doesn't lead to transformation, if it doesn't lead to you making a choice right here, right now, about which side of the separation you're going to be on. Let me take you back to that desert one more time. Yesterday morning, January 13th, I drove back out there. Not at 2 a.m. this time, but at 10 a.m. in the full light of day. I needed to see that place again, to stand on that dune again, to make sure it was all real. Because part of me, the rational, skeptical part, kept wondering if I'd imagined it all, if it had been some kind of sleep-deprived hallucination or spiritual delusion. But when I got there, when I climbed that same dune and stood at the summit looking out over the vast expanse of sand and sky, I knew with absolute certainty that it had been real, more real than anything else in my life. The presence I'd felt there still lingered, like a fragrance that clings to your clothes long after you've left a place. The sand beneath my feet felt sacred, consecrated by the encounters that had happened there. I knelt in that same spot where I'd knelt 3 nights in a row, and I prayed. Not the polished religious prayers I'd learned to pray, but raw, desperate, honest prayers that came from the deepest part of my soul. God, I said, I don't want to be one of the fading ones. I don't want to be someone who plays church while missing you. I don't want to survive in the desert when you're offering me the ocean. Whatever it costs, whatever it takes, I want to be real. I want to actually know you, not just know about you. I want to be part of the glowing ones, the hungry ones, the desperate ones who are being gathered and unified and transformed. And as I prayed, I felt him speak to my heart, not audibly this time, but clearly, unmistakably. And what he said was this: Jonathan, the same choice you're making right now is the choice every person who hears this message needs to make. And they need to make it now, not tomorrow, not next week, not when it's more convenient. Now, because the wind is blowing stronger every day and the time for choosing is running out. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Here's the practical, specific, actionable response to everything I've shared. The 30-minute daily challenge starting today, not tomorrow, not next Monday, but today. I need you to commit to 30 minutes of completely uninterrupted time alone with God, not Bible study time, though that's important, not prayer list time, though that has its place, but encounter time, relationship time, time where you shut off your phone, close your door, eliminate every distraction, and do nothing but pursue His presence. Here's what that looks like practically. Minutes 1 or 5, silence and surrender. Start by sitting in complete silence. Don't pray yet. Don't worship yet. Just sit. Let the noise of your life settle. Let the anxiety and the to-do lists and the distractions fade into the background. And as you sit there, consciously surrender everything to Him, your plans, your fears, your need to control, your religious performance, everything. Say out loud, Jesus, I'm not here to perform for you. I'm not here to impress you. I'm here because I'm thirsty and I need you to be the water. I'm here because I'm hungry and I need you to be the bread. I'm here because I'm dying in the desert and I need you to lead me to the ocean. Minute 6:15. Honest conversation. This is where you get real, brutally, uncomfortably real. Tell Him the truth about where you actually are spiritually, not where you wish you were, not where you pretend to be on Sunday mornings, where you actually are. Tell Him, I've been faking it. I've been going through the motions. I've been more concerned with looking like a good Christian than actually being one. Or, I'm scared. I'm scared that if I really pursue you, You'll ask me to give up things I don't want to give up. You'll call me to do things I don't want to do. You'll change me in ways I'm not ready to be changed. Or, I don't know if I've ever really known you. I know about you. I know the doctrine and the theology and the Bible stories, but I don't know if I've ever actually experienced you, encountered you, been in real relationship with you. Whatever the truth is, tell him, because he already knows anyway, and your honesty is the crack that lets his presence in. Minutes 16 to 25, worship and waiting. Put on a worship song, not a playlist, just one song that draws you into his presence. And worship, not performance worship, not showing off your voice worship, but desperate, hungry, abandoned worship. Sing like you're the only person in the universe. Sing like your life depends on it, because it does. And then wait. After the song ends, sit in silence again and wait for him to speak. He might speak through a scripture that comes to mind. He might speak through a picture or a vision. He might speak through a gentle whisper in your spirit, or he might just let you feel his presence, his love, his acceptance. Don't rush this part. Don't fill the silence with more words. Just wait, just receive, just be with him. Minutes 26 to 30, response and commitment. End by responding to whatever he's shown you, whatever he's said, whatever you've experienced. Write it down, speak it out loud, make a specific commitment based on what he's revealed. Maybe he's shown you an area of compromise you need to address. Maybe he's revealed a relationship you need to heal or end. Maybe he's called you to a new level of obedience or sacrifice. Maybe he simply reminded you that you're loved, that you're his, that you're not alone. Whatever it is, respond, commit, take action, and then do it again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day for 30 days straight. I know what you're thinking. Jonathan, I don't have 30 minutes. I'm too busy. I have work and kids and responsibilities and... Stop. Just stop. Because here's the truth. You have time for what you prioritize. You have time for social media. You have time for Netflix. You have time for scrolling and shopping and 100 other things that don't matter. You can find 30 minutes for the one who gave his life for you. You can find 30 minutes to pursue the relationship that will determine your eternity. And if you truly can't find 30 minutes, then you need to hear this. Your life is out of control. You've let the urgent crowd out the essential. You've let the temporary eclipse the eternal. And you need to make some radical changes, starting today. The deadline. Here's what Jesus made clear to me in that desert. Time is running out. Not in some vague, someday in the future sense, but in a real, urgent, the clock is ticking sense. So I'm giving you a deadline. 30 days from today, February 13th, 2026, I want you to evaluate where you are. I want you to ask yourself, have I been faithful to pursue him daily? Have I experienced breakthrough? Have I moved from desert to ocean, from fading to glowing, from religion to relationship? And I want you to come back to this channel and tell me. Leave a comment, send a message, share your testimony, because your story might be the thing that wakes someone else up. Your breakthrough might be the evidence someone else needs to believe that this is real, that it's possible, that it's worth the cost. But here's the warning. If you ignore this message, if you scroll past this video, if you hear everything I've shared and choose to do nothing, you're making a choice. You're choosing the desert. You're choosing to fade. You're choosing religion over relationship. And when the separation is complete, when the wheat is fully divided from the chaff, you'll have no one to blame but yourself. I know that sounds harsh. I know it sounds like judgment, but it's not judgment. It's love. It's the same love that drove Jesus to overturn tables in the temple, the same love that made him call the Pharisees whitewashed tombs, the same love that compelled him to say hard things to people who needed to hear them, because real love tells the truth. Real love warns of danger. Real love refuses to let people sleepwalk into disaster without at least trying to wake them up. The biblical foundation. Everything I've shared isn't just based on my experience in the desert, it's rooted in Scripture. Let me show you. Matthew 7:21-23. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name and in your name drive out demons and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Did you catch that? Many people, not a few, but many, who did religious activities in Jesus' name will hear him say, I never knew you. Not I used to know you. Not you fell away, but I never knew you. They never had relationship. They only had religion. Matthew 25:1-13. the parable of the 10 virgins. 5 were wise and had oil in their lamps. 5 were foolish and ran out of oil. When the bridegroom came, the foolish ones were locked out, and he said to them, "Truly I tell you, I don't know you." Same theme, same warning. The difference wasn't about being good or bad, religious or irreligious. It was about being prepared or unprepared, having oil or running dry, maintaining the connection to the source or letting it run out. Revelation 3, 15-16. I know your deeds, that you are neither cold nor hot. I wish you were either one or the other, so because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. Jesus doesn't want lukewarm followers. He doesn't want people who are sort of committed, kind of interested, moderately engaged. He wants all in or all out, fire or ice, desperate hunger or honest rejection, but not lukewarm religion that pretends to be relationship. 2 Timothy 3:5, having a form of godliness but denying its power. That's exactly what I saw in the desert. Millions of people with the form, the church attendance, the Bible knowledge, the religious vocabulary, but without the power, without the presence, without the actual relationship that transforms. The separation I witnessed isn't some new doctrine I'm making up. It's woven throughout Scripture. It's what Jesus warned about repeatedly. It's what the apostles wrote about. It's what the prophets foresaw, and it's happening right now, in our generation, in our time. My personal testimony. I need to be vulnerable with you about something. Playing Jesus in The Chosen has been the greatest honor of my life, but it's also been the greatest danger, because it's so easy to confuse portraying him with knowing him. It's so easy to speak his words on camera and forget to listen for his words in prayer. It's so easy to be surrounded by Christian culture and Christian community and Christian success and miss the actual presence of Christ himself. There have been seasons, I'm ashamed to admit this, but it's true, where I've been so busy playing Jesus that I've neglected spending time with Jesus, where I've been so focused on helping other people encounter him through the show that I've neglected my own encounters with him, where I've been surviving on the fumes of past experiences instead of pursuing fresh, daily, intimate relationship. And I think that's why he brought me to that desert, not to punish me, but to wake me up, to remind me that no amount of ministry success, no level of platform or influence, no degree of biblical knowledge can substitute for actual, real, daily relationship with him. I'm one of the ones who was starting to fade, not completely. There was still a flicker of life, still a spark of genuine hunger, but I was adapting to the desert. I was learning to survive on less. I was settling for occasional spiritual experiences instead of constant spiritual connection. And if it can happen to me, someone who literally plays Jesus for a living, who's surrounded by prayer and worship and scripture every day, it can happen to anyone. It can happen to you. That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up. Because if you're feeling that holy restlessness, that divine dissatisfaction, that sense that there has to be more than what you're currently experiencing, that's not condemnation. That's invitation. That's the wind of the Spirit blowing across your life, calling you out of the desert and into the ocean. The specific steps. Beyond the 30-minute daily challenge, here are some other specific practical steps you need to take. 1. Audit your spiritual life. Sit down with a journal and honestly assess where you are. Ask yourself, when was the last time I experienced God's presence in a way that was undeniable? When was the last time I heard his voice clearly? When was the last time I was so desperate for him that I couldn't think about anything else? Am I more passionate about God now than I was a year ago, or has my passion cooled? Do I spend more time on my phone than in prayer? Do I know more about current events than I know about Scripture? Am I more concerned with what people think of me than what God thinks of me? Write down your honest answers. Don't sugarcoat it. Don't make excuses. Just tell the truth. 2. Identify and eliminate distractions. What's keeping you from pursuing God with your whole heart? Is it social media? Is it entertainment? Is it busyness? Is it relationships that drain you spiritually? Is it sin you've been tolerating? Make a list, and then make a plan to eliminate or drastically reduce those things. I'm not saying you have to become a monk and give up everything, but I am saying that if something is standing between you and intimacy with God, it has to go. Jesus said if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. That's how serious he is about removing obstacles to relationship with him. 3. Find or create community. You can't do this alone. You need other people who are hungry, who are desperate, who are pursuing God with the same intensity you're committing to. If your current church or small group isn't that place, Find one that is, or create one. Gather 2 or 3 other people who want to go deeper and commit to meeting weekly to pray, to worship, to be honest about your struggles, to encourage each other in the pursuit. 4. Fast regularly. I'm talking about fasting from food, but also fasting from other things: social media, entertainment, news, whatever has a hold on you. Fasting creates hunger, it creates desperation, it creates space for God to fill. Start with 1 day a week, then maybe 1 day a month where you fast from everything except water and prayer. Let your physical hunger remind you of your spiritual hunger. 5. Worship extravagantly. Don't just sing worship songs in church. Create space in your home for worship. Put on music and worship like no one's watching. Dance, shout, weep, lift your hands, get on your face. Don't worry about looking foolish. David danced before the Lord with all his might, and when his wife criticized him, he said he'd become even more undignified than that. Abandoned worship breaks through religious performance and creates space for genuine encounter. 6. Read scripture differently. Stop reading the Bible like a textbook. Start reading it like a love letter. Ask the Holy Spirit to speak to you through it. Read slowly. Meditate on one verse or one passage until it comes alive. Memorize scripture that resonates with your hunger. Let the word become living and active in your life, not just information in your head. 7. Testify. Share what God is doing in your life, not in a bragging way, but in a testimony way. Tell people about your encounters, your breakthroughs, your struggles, your journey from desert to ocean. Your testimony has power: power to encourage others, power to build your own faith, power to push back darkness. The urgency. I can't stress this enough. You don't have unlimited time to make this choice. I don't know if we have years or months or weeks before the separation becomes complete, before the visible manifestation of what's already happening in the spirit realm. But I know it's soon. I know the wind is blowing stronger. I know the pressure is increasing. I know that everything that can be shaken is being shaken. And I know that when it's over, when the wheat is fully separated from the chaff, there will be no more chances, no more opportunities to choose, no more invitations to come deeper. The door will be shut, just like it was for the foolish virgins who ran out of oil. So please, I'm begging you, don't wait. Don't put this off. Don't tell yourself you'll get serious about God later, when life calms down, when you have more time, when it's more convenient. Because later might be too late. The door might be shut. The separation might be complete. Choose today. Choose right now. Choose to be one of the glowing ones, the hungry ones, the desperate ones who are being gathered and unified and transformed. The hope. But here's the beautiful thing. It's not too late. Not yet. If you're hearing this message, if you're feeling the conviction, if you're sensing the pull towards something deeper, that's evidence that you're not one of the fading ones. That's evidence that there's still life, still hunger, still hope. God doesn't convict people he's given up on. He doesn't call out to people he's written off. If you're feeling the weight of this message, if you're sensing the urgency, if you're experiencing that holy restlessness, that's him. That's the wind of his spirit blowing across your life. That's his invitation to come out of the desert and into the ocean. And here's what I know about God. He's not waiting for you to get your act together before he'll accept you. He's not demanding perfection before he'll embrace you. He's not requiring you to clean yourself up before he'll let you come close. He's standing there with open arms saying, "Come, come as you are. Come thirsty. Come desperate. Come broken. Come honest. Just come. And I'll give you water that will become in you a spring welling up to eternal life. I'll transform your desert into a garden. I'll turn your fading light into blazing fire. I'll take your religious performance and replace it with real relationship." That's the gospel. That's the good news. Not that you have to work harder or try harder or be better, but that he's already done the work, already paid the price, already made the way. All you have to do is come. All you have to do is choose. All you have to do is say yes. The final call. So here's what I need you to do right now before you close this video, before you move on to the next thing. First, leave a comment below. Tell me honestly where you are. Are you glowing or fading? Are you in the desert or the ocean? Are you ready to commit to the 30-day challenge? Don't give me religious answers. Give me real answers. Your honesty might save your life. Second, subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I'm going to be sharing more about this journey, more about what God is doing, more about the separation and the gathering and the transformation that's happening. You need to be part of this community of hungry, desperate, pursuing believers. Third, share this video. I know that sounds like a typical YouTube call to action, but I'm serious. There are people in your life who need to hear this message. people who are fading and don't even know it, people who are dying of thirst in the desert and have forgotten what water tastes like. Share this with them, tag them, send them the link. It might be the thing that wakes them up before it's too late. Fourth, start the 30-minute challenge today, not tomorrow, today. Right after you finish watching this video, find a quiet place, set a timer for 30 minutes, and pursue his presence like your life depends on it, because it does. Fifth, mark your calendar for February 13th, 2026. That's 30 days from now. On that day, I want you to come back here and tell me what's happened. Tell me about your encounters, your breakthroughs, your transformation. Tell me how you've moved from desert to ocean, from fading to glowing, from religion to relationship. And if you haven't experienced breakthrough by then, tell me that too. Tell me what obstacles you're facing, what struggles you're dealing with, what questions you have, because we're in this together. We're a community of hungry people pursuing the one who satisfies. The closing image. I want to leave you with one final image from that desert. On my last visit there, as I stood on that dune in the full light of day, I noticed something I hadn't seen during the nighttime encounters. In the valley between the dunes, there was a small patch of green, just a tiny spot, maybe 10 feet across, where somehow water had collected beneath the surface and a few plants were growing. Not the tough, adapted desert plants, but actual green, thriving vegetation. I climbed down to investigate, and when I got close, I realized there was a spring there. Just a small one, barely a trickle, but it was enough. Enough to create life in the middle of death, enough to bring green to the middle of brown, enough to prove that even in the desert, even in the driest, most barren place, water can still flow if you dig deep enough to find the source. And I heard God whisper to my heart, "That's what I'm offering my people. Not adaptation to the desert, but access to the spring. Not survival on drops, but thriving on rivers. Not barely alive, but abundantly alive. But they have to dig, they have to pursue, they have to go deeper than the surface, deeper than the comfortable, deeper than the religious routine. They have to dig until they hit the source, and when they do, everything changes. That's my prayer for you, that you'll dig, that you'll pursue, that you'll go deeper than you've ever gone before, that you'll stop settling for desert Christianity and start pursuing ocean depths, that you'll move from fading to glowing, from surviving to thriving, from religion to relationship. The wind is blowing, the separation is happening, the choice is yours, but the time to choose is now. Watch what happens next, not just in the world around you, but in your own life, in your own heart, in your own relationship with the one who loves you more than you can possibly imagine. He's waiting, the water is flowing, the invitation is extended. Will you come? I'm Jonathan Roumie, and this is my testimony. This is what Jesus showed me in the desert. This is the message he told me to share. Now it's up to you. Drop your comments below. Tell me your decision. Tell me your commitment. Tell me you're ready to move from desert to ocean. And I'll see you on the other side of your breakthrough. God bless you, and may you be one of the glowing ones.